Breaking right now on Morning News Now, ceasefire in question. This morning, Iran denying Israel's claims of an Israeli missile attack overnight, just hours after President Trump said both sides agreed to end the fighting. The ceasefire deal coming after yesterday's Iranian strike on a U.S. military base in Qatar in retaliation for the U.S. bombing Iran's nuclear sites over the weekend. Now President Trump heading to the Netherlands to meet with global allies at the NATO summit with his proposal for temporary truce on the verge of collapse. We have a lot of late-breaking developments to cover this hour. Thanks very much for joining us. Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. We're going to begin this morning with the latest from President Trump. He spoke to reporters just moments ago, talking about the status of this ceasefire following his announcement last night that Israel and Iran had agreed to the ceasefire.
Yeah, the president is now on his way to the NATO summit. That's what you were just seeing. It's in the Netherlands, where this conflict is expected to loom large on NATO leaders' agenda. Let's listen to some of what he had to say before leaving for the summit.
But I'm not happy that Israel's going out now. There was one rocket that I guess was fired overboard. It was after the time limit, and it missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. It's ridiculous. I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either.
We have a team with us this morning to cover this. We have former spokesperson for the U.S. mission to the UN, Hagar Shamali, standing by with analysis on this, along with NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez for the latest on the ground. But we begin with NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba. She's following developments from Washington. Monica, good morning. Let's start on what we just heard there from the president a few moments ago as he left for the NATO summit, really expressing that he's not happy with what he's seen from Israel. What are the key takeaways from what he had to say?
Yeah, good morning, Savannah and Joe. And just moments after that, as he boarded Marine One to head to the tarmac, he issued another warning to Israel, which I think is significant, specifically imploring them not to drop more bombs and effectively asking the pilots to turn around right now. He said, if you do it, that is to say, if you continue to drop more bombs on Iran, this is a major violation. Bring those pilots home now. So again, this is a president expressing his displeasure at the very fragile semi-ceasefire that was maybe in effect just for moments and not necessarily lasting, given the events of the last 12 hours or so. We know that President Trump spent much of yesterday trying to help broker this deal. He was working the phones while monitoring in real time what was happening with an Iranian attack on a U.S. base in Qatar, though Iran did give the U.S. a heads up in advance, so they had an ability to prepare. And as a result, there were no casualties, and the president was pleased with that, and then tried to take that opportunity to paint this as the moment that both sides could, if they agreed to, perhaps stop the fighting. But this was what is known as a phased ceasefire, and so it was meant to be that if one side stopped firing after a certain amount of hours, then the other side would commit to do the same. But as you saw just there, the president implying what Israel is saying in their own statement, that Iran violated that with an errant missile, and that now Israel is pledging to resume their fighting. And so we're in a very, very fluid moment here, guys. And this really just speaks to the fact that the president has tried to project this idea of peace through strength. And he believed that the 3 bombs that were dropped on the nuclear sites in Iran by the U.S. on Saturday tried to really put an end to what he's trying to call the 12-day war. But there are just so many questions now about where this goes from here. And there's no clear indication that this ceasefire that didn't really take hold will hold now.
Monica, before the president stepped in front of the cameras moments ago, we had seen him over the last 12 hours talking about the ceasefire on Truth Social. That included an announcement earlier this morning saying, quote, the ceasefire is now in effect. Please do not violate it. Despite that, we have all this back and forth that we've been talking about this morning. As the president has been sending out these messages, do we have an idea? Is he surrounded by his national security team when he's putting all this information out there?
Well, he was all day yesterday, and we do know that Steve Witkoff, his special envoy, who's been a key voice in all of this, was a major player in trying to get some of this arranged yesterday. We know that Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Rubio had also been working the phones to try to get this in place. But again, in the overnight hours, not typically, and this is, again, a president who is heading to NATO and will be joined on the plane by some of his top officials, and certainly he'll be huddling with them now as he is en route to The Hague and to the Netherlands to now continue these conversations that are going to dominate this summit, no doubt. And I think this is just a situation that is really developing moment by moment. And we didn't play this for you because we can't use this language on air. But the president, when he ended taking questions from reporters, used very colorful language to describe Iran and Israel right now, saying they don't know expletive what they are doing.
Monica, this conflict, of course, is expected to dominate the agenda at the NATO summit where the president's headed. What's the general feeling among NATO leaders about U.S. involvement in this conflict?
Well, remember that European officials were trying to meet with Iranian officials in Geneva just a matter of days ago to try to pursue a diplomatic solution before the U.S. went forward with those strikes in Iran. And there was still the hope of that potential path to continue to curb Iran's nuclear capabilities. So, again, the window here for some kind of diplomacy still exists. That's likely what many of these NATO allies are going to be pushing for, and that certainly will be at the top of the agenda, while the president is also going to likely try to focus a lot of the conversation on defense spending, wanting countries to commit at least 5% of their GDP to defense. That's something, remember, he's talked about time and time again. And then looming in the background to all of this, but perhaps also very key to foreign policy and what many leaders will want to discuss at NATO as well, is the continued war between Russia and Ukraine, which we expect will be part of the high-level discussions as well. Savannah and Joe.
All right, Monica Alba, thank you for starting us off this hour.
Let's continue this conversation with NBC News international correspondent Raph Sanchez. So, Raph, I guess the key question folks are asking right now, is a ceasefire in place right now?
Joe, that is the question being asked around the Middle East, across the world this morning. I think it is probably helpful just to walk through the sequence of events to how we got where we are right now. Last night, President Trump announces the ceasefire. This morning, we hear from both the Israeli and the Iranian governments that they have accepted the ceasefire. The Israelis said that they have achieved their military objectives, that they have degraded Iran's nuclear program, weakened its missile capacities, killed its senior leadership. The Iranians saying they are prepared to stop shooting as long as Israel and the United States does also. So calm seemed to be taking hold early this morning. And then all of a sudden you have the Israeli military saying that they have detected Iranian ballistic missiles fired towards Israel, the air raid sirens going off, and Israel's defense minister saying that the Israelis will retaliate with strikes in the heart of Tehran. Now, as far as we can tell, so far, those strikes have not yet happened. President Trump, as he was leaving the White House, seemed to think that there were Israeli fighter jets literally in the air on their way to Tehran, and he implored the Israelis to turn those jets and bring them home. If the Israelis do not go ahead with the strike, then potentially this ceasefire holds. If they do, it is going to be a major, major challenge to this fragile peace. Guys.
Raph, let's also talk about the retaliation we've seen from Iran so far after the U.S. bombed those nuclear sites. Iran targeted a U.S. base in Qatar, but it looks like the damage there was minimal. Is that right? What have we heard from the U.S. and Qatar in the aftermath?
Yeah, Savannah, that's our understanding. The Iranians firing 14 missiles at the Al Udeid air base in Qatar. This is the largest American military base in the Middle East. There's some 10,000 U.S. personnel stations there. President Trump saying the United States got a heads up from Iran ahead of time that this was going to happen, which indicates that this was, from Iran's perspective, a largely symbolic strike, that they felt they had to retaliate, given that the Americans had hit those 3 nuclear facilities, but they were not looking for a wider conflict. So no casualties, either American or Qatari, minimal damage, according to the United States. You are hearing strong condemnation from Qatar for that Iran violated its sovereignty. But as President Trump put it, this seems to be the Iranians, quote, getting it out of their system. guys.
And Raf, you mentioned the strikes on the nuclear facilities in Iran. Do we have any new information on what kind of impact that may have had?
Yeah, that's one of the major questions still outstanding at this point. President Trump said that the U.S. totally obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. The Pentagon is not prepared to go that far. They were still in the process of carrying out what they call battle damage assessments, trying to understand exactly how much damage they did to these Iranian facilities, one of which is buried literally in the side of the mountain. And one of the big questions here is what has happened to Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium, the material that could be used to one day make a bomb. Our understanding is that it had been stored at the facility at Isfahan, which was hit by American cruise missiles fired by submarines. We are not clear at this point what has happened to that material, whether it was buried in the rubble of that strike, whether it was moved somewhere else, and if so, how it's being held and what it may be used for. Guys.
All right, Raf Sanchez. Raf, appreciate your reporting. Thank you.
Let's get more analysis with Hagar Shamali. She's the host of Oh My World on YouTube and the former spokesperson for the U.S. mission to the UN and former NSC director for Syria and Lebanon. Hagar, good morning. Thanks for joining us. So I'd like first just your take on this sort of ceasefire. Israel saying it will attack Iran again, accusing Tehran of violating the truce. President Trump, though, as we just heard, on his way to NATO, warning Israel not to drop any more bombs. What's your take on this back and forth?
Sure. Well, when I saw the ceasefire, by the way, my first thought was that it was likely going to be very fragile. As you've seen with other ceasefires, by the way, post October 7th, for example, one of the escalations I really compare what we've seen to the most is the escalation you saw last fall between Israel and Hezbollah, where you had the significant escalation. And then when Hezbollah was really just on its knees, you reached a ceasefire, but because of violations of that ceasefire, you still have strikes that continue. Occasionally, Israel striking certain missiles because of Hezbollah violations of that ceasefire. And so I kind of expected that this wouldn't be the end of it, that you would see ups and downs. But that's not how President Trump sees this. President Trump ultimately, and I believe this from the very beginning, by the way, from the very beginning, President Trump wanted a deal, and that was very clear. That's why he kept playing these kind of games, why he kept giving Iran these windows to come to surrender, quote, to surrender or to come to the table. That's ultimately what he wants. He doesn't want to pursue a policy of regime change, as was discussed, in the last couple of weeks. And so that's there. You have two sides that are really just not exactly on the same. They don't have the same goals exactly.
Hagar, Monica just mentioned how the president believes in peace through strength. And we saw how frustrated he was there just moments ago, speaking with reporters. There are decades worth of world leaders who have tried to find peace in the Middle East, and they've been unsuccessful. Is this a reality check for the president here?
Well, perhaps a little bit of a reality check. I will tell you, I do have hope for peace in the Middle East in ways I have never had hope before, and that's largely because of the decimation of Iran's proxies across the region. The Houthis are sitting on their heels. Hamas is almost decimated. Hezbollah has been decapitated, and as you saw, many of them did not react when you had this escalation between Israel and Iran. But that said, and Iran itself is very weak, and they're showing that. Yes, they lobbed all these missiles, but it was a performance, and we knew that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have said anything to the U.S. about these missiles coming toward the airbase in Qatar. That said, I do think he's going to try. He's going to move ahead. Don't forget that he achieved the Abraham Accords. That was a significant achievement. And his goal, and he said it on the campaign, was to expand that as much as possible and include as many countries as possible. And I think he's going to do it in a way of using the levers of U.S. power in ways that previous administrations haven't. Right? We've not previously struck Iran directly at its nuclear program this way. And so I do think that there's a chance there, but yes, he's dealing with the realities of the regime. The Iranian regime does not want to make a deal. That's not how this regime works. It won't survive if it doesn't pursue its foreign policies of destabilizing the Middle East and in having a nuclear program. And so it's not going to be easy is the answer to that.
Hagar, if this ceasefire does indeed hold, if this actually happens, how do you think both sides will assess the outcome of then at that point what would be this 12-day conflict?
Sure. So the issue that you have that's a bit confusing, and Raf highlighted to this is the question that remains in my mind, actually, is really about this enriched uranium that might have been moved. I believe Vice President Vance said that there's an assessment that it's possible the Iranian regime moved that stockpile, or at least part of it. Now, that's not a simple thing to do, that when you move highly enriched uranium, and you're talking about, these are pellets, basically, kind of these, they look like big hockey pucks, and they're highly radioactive. It's not something that you can just carry and move to a basement. You need another nuclear facility in order to store something like that, or you're going to be emitting radioactive waves on everybody around it. And so it's possible some of it was moved. That doesn't mean that their nuclear program wasn't set back years, if not decades. But yes, that assessment has to be made clear. But that's the thing that I think is the most important, because what does Iran do, with the Iranian regime do with that remaining stockpile, given this situation if it's not completely finished off?
Yeah, Hagar Shamali, really important context and information there. Thank you so much.
Back here in the U.S., almost half the country is strategizing over how they can spend as much time as possible indoors today. Many of us are bracing for the peak of this intense heat wave that has already set dozens of records, and the worst of it is expected to come today with, get this, 149 million people under heat alerts from the Midwest to the Northeast. Cities like Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. are all under extreme heat warnings. All those places are bracing for a stifling stew of high heat and humidity, which will make it feel like it's more than 110 degrees in some places. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda takes a look at the heat's unrelenting impact.
In the first week of summer, a record-smashing heat wave is scorching the eastern half of the U.S.
It's just
overwhelming. Buckling roadways and sending this car airborne in Missouri. Some passengers riding Amtrak say their train got stuck without power and AC. Amtrak says a train malfunctioned. More than a dozen major cities are facing extreme heat warnings, from St. Louis to Boston to Philadelphia, where the fire department has deployed extra medics as part of heat squads.
We go to any firehouse right now, and more than likely we won't see our ambulances because they're out there responding and probably at hospitals taking patients to them.
It felt hotter than 100 degrees near this high school graduation ceremony in North Jersey, which landed 9 attendees in nearby hospitals, according to the city. Across the region, officials urging residents to take advantage of cooling centers and splash pads.
The humidity takes it to a different level.
New York City declaring a state of emergency, poised to hit triple digits before Houston this year. It's a 1-2 punch north in Oneida County, where a deadly storm Sunday knocked out power to thousands just ahead of the blistering heat, now bearing down on businesses. The junction in the Catskills closed to protect their staff.
These kinds of temperatures are rare for you guys in the mountains.
Rarely gets this hot up here. When it's this hot and this humid, it's just impossible for us to get that extra heat out of the kitchen.
Over the weekend, the heat hitting afternoon baseball games. The Reds' Ellie De La Cruz and Mariners' Trent Thornton both suffering heat-related illnesses as an unrelenting heat wave seizes the start of summer. Emily Ikeda, NBC News.
And that record-breaking heat continues today. We have meteorologist Michelle Grossman tracking the temperatures for us.
Michelle, how's it looking out there?
I like how you asked that, yes. It's looking very hot. You guys, we are looking at dangerous temperatures once again. It was hot yesterday. It's going to be hot once again today. And we're going to be even hotter in spots. But this is the peak of the day. And then we start to see some relief tomorrow in spots. Some are going to hold on to the heat, just not quite as strong as today. So 149 million Americans, that's almost half the population, looking at heat alerts. Heat advisories are in the orange. We have extreme heat warnings. That is in the hot pink. And we're talking major cities: Pittsburgh, Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, D.C., Norfolk. You want to take all those warnings, heed all the warnings. You want to stay indoors when you can if you have air conditioning. If you need to be outside for your job or camps, you want to find shade and hydrate as much as you can. Look at all these potential records that will be broken over the next day or two. Yesterday we broke 63. Today and over tomorrow we could watch see 75 records challenged. So all these little red dots here, that's where we could see the records falling, and we most likely will see over 60 records falling today. It's all due to this area of high pressure tacked in place. It's been there for days and days and days, and what happens is it traps that heat under the high pressure. So we see these temperatures soar, and it's not just the air temperatures. We're looking at air temperatures 20, 25 degrees above what is typical for this time of year, soaring into the 90s, soaring into the 100s, but you factor in that humidity, and it's going to feel a whole lot worse than that. Some spots feeling over 110. Look at Boston, 101, 21 degrees above what is normal for this time of year. 100 in New York City, D.C., 101, 14 degrees above normal. You're going to be hot again tomorrow. And even back to the Ohio Valley, the Midwest, we're looking at temperatures in the 90s and also the 100s. So really from Atlanta to portions of Maine, we're looking at temperatures into the 100s. The June heat wave does continue tomorrow. Once again, watching those temperatures climb into the 90s, into the 100s, but a little bit of a break in portions of New England. By later on tomorrow, we're going to see a bigger break. So Boston, 88 degrees tomorrow, 97 in D.C., 100 in Raleigh. And then look what happens on Thursday. We have a cold front that's going to come through. That's going to bring some showers late Wednesday, but it's going to bring big relief to Boston by Thursday. That's going to feel good. 69, 70 on Friday, 74 on Saturday. That's going to work its way down to about New York City. We're going to see some relief, too, on Thursday. But notice
and
DC
then no one
and then no one else.
that.
That's it. There's like a line. So
Yeah. Wow.
DC is going to stay hot.
That's quite the line there. My goodness.
Yes. We'll be feeling good.
Yeah.
All right.
Selfishly.
Yeah. Thanks, Michelle.
Sure.
Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, summer bummer, rising temperatures causing a different kind of heat exhaustion. A look at how the heat might compromise a good night's sleep.
Up first, though, after the break, new developments in the fight over deportation, the new ruling by the Supreme Court. Next, we'll be right back. We are back with the story of a Marine veteran and his family who are caught up in the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. That veteran's wife was separated from their young children after she was taken into ICE custody following a routine green card interview. NBC's Aaron Gilchrist has their story.
Marine Corps veteran Adrian Cluot didn't expect to be caring for his two young children all on his own.
How are you guys doing?
My son misses his mom a lot. It's actually gotten worse in the past couple of days. He's constantly asking me for her and just having like little breakdowns.
After immigration authorities detained his wife, Paola, at a green card interview in New Orleans.
I was devastated. I was angry, upset.
The couple shares a 2-year-old son and a 3-month-old daughter.
We switched to formula. She does get to breastfeed twice a week when I go to visit my wife.
Cluot says his wife came to the U.S. from Mexico as a teenager with her now estranged mother. He says she was detained because of a deportation order issued in 2018.
My wife was living in a homeless shelter in Indio, California, when this all went down. Her mom skipped the appointment. The judge, by default, issued a removal order for my wife, her mother, and her brother. And she was never notified of it. Like, she had no way of knowing.
Cluot says his family was trying to do the right thing and obey the law by still going to the green card interview.
The interviewer went and talked to his supervisor, and it came back, told us that we did well and to wait in the lobby for paperwork regarding our next appointment. And then, the 3 ICE agents showed up and arrested my wife.
Cluot taking his wife's wedding ring for safekeeping as he says she was handcuffed and led away. The Department of Homeland Security telling NBC News in part, Paola Cluot is in the country illegally. President Trump and Secretary Noem are not going to ignore the rule of law. After nearly a month, Cluot says he's working to get Paola's immigration case reopened and trying everything he can to bring her home.
It seems like there's no humanity with this, whole deportation stick going on right now. It feels hopeless, and I'm hoping I'm wrong.
Our thanks to Aaron Gilchrist for that report.
And another big immigration headline, a new Supreme Court order is paving the way for the Trump administration to once again deport immigrants with criminal convictions to third countries, countries where they have no previous ties.
A lower federal court previously ruled that migrants should have a, quote, meaningful opportunity to legally raise fears of persecution or torture when being deported to countries other than their homeland. Some of the countries that have made a deal with the White House to receive migrants include El Salvador, Guatemala, and South Sudan. Yesterday's unsigned order is the latest legal win for the administration as the as it challenges the scope of immigrants' rights to due process under the Constitution.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos is here to help us break down this ruling. All right, so we had a U.S. district judge in Massachusetts. He initially blocked these deportations to third countries.
Right.
Then he said the Trump administration violated his order when they tried to send a group from Texas to South Sudan. Give us a little bit of the history here and how it ties into this Supreme Court case.
Right. So the district court actually blocked the Trump administration from removing people without this process. And it was a process created by DHS itself, a procedure to determine basically whether or not, yes, you can remove these people to third countries, as they're called, basically countries that have nothing to do with the individual and they're not barred on their immigration order. So South Sudan, for example, they can be removed there. The government just has to follow a process to ensure that they won't face persecution there. So it's always been the case that the Trump administration can remove these folks, but they have to provide this procedure. So the Trump administration appealed this up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, in an unsigned order, without any sort of showing their work, allowed these removals to go forward. So presumably the Trump administration still has to provide this procedural, I guess we'll call it due process, although it doesn't really flow from the Constitution so much as DHS's own internal procedures and federal law. But these removals will continue. The question really is ultimately what degree of procedural due process is going to be required.
So unsigned order, as you said, but we do know that all three liberal justices dissented. I want to read a little bit here. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she wrote that the court was, quote, rewarding lawlessness by allowing the administration to violate immigrants' due process rights. She said essentially the fact that thousands will suffer violence in far-flung locales was less important to the conservative majority of justices here than the remote possibility that this lower court judge had exceeded his authority. What ultimately changes as a result of this decision, and what do you make there of what Sotomayor said?
I'm really glad you pulled that quote because that is a perfect example of what's called a balancing test. Whenever there's an injunction, whenever a district court says, hey, you either can do this or you're forced to do this. Generally, they tell someone to refrain from doing something. Whenever a court does that, you have to do a balancing test. And that's what the justice is speaking about there, is that she's saying, hey, there's this risk that someone will be deported or removed to a country that is very dangerous, like South Sudan, or the other side of the balancing test is just that the government has to wait a little longer to figure out whether or not they can do this. And in the justice's opinion, the dissenting justice's opinion, this balancing test weighs in favor of allowing this pause to continue because better to be safe than sorry.
Let's talk about South Sudan, which has come up in this. It currently has a level 4 do not travel advisory from the U.S. State Department. That's because of the risk of crime, kidnapping, armed conflict. So does this ruling leave immigrants with any legal options to fight being deported to a place like this?
Well, yes. They've always been given 10 days to raise their concerns. There's screening that has to be done. Obviously, each side is disagreeing as to whether or not, number one, the government is following it, but also as to whether or not there should be more safeguards in place. But those are the options going forward. And here's the thing. The mere fact that South Sudan might be an incredibly dangerous place is actually a very low-level part of the analysis because the administration can remove people to third countries, as they're called. There really isn't, other than the screening and the concern about retaliation or persecution, the mere fact that a country itself is dangerous by our standards isn't going to prevent removal there.
You see the quote there, fire up the deportation planes. That was a quote from a Department of Homeland Security official after this decision by the Supreme Court. Danny Ceballos, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up, it could be a game changer for millions of people. When we come back, what we're learning about a new lower maintenance weight loss drug. It could make those weekly shots a thing of the past.
And are we going backward? Why more LGBTQ plus singles say there has been a shift in the way they date. Your weekly check-in is next here on Morning News Now.
We are back with our weekly mental health check-in. This morning, we're taking a look at how politics are changing the way many individuals within the LGBTQ community navigate the dating scene.
Plus, we're talking about a self-help method called tapping. It's gaining in popularity, but some experts are skeptical.
For more on this, let's bring in psychotherapist Dr. Robbie Ludwig. Dr. Robbie, always great to see you. Good morning. So Actually going to start with another story we didn't mention yet. In recent months, we've seen celebrities like, for example, Justin Bieber, share some concerning messages online about their mental health struggles. This is something many of us have seen with our own friends also. If you see a concerning message from someone that you do actually know, what is the best way to handle that? Should you reach out?
Yeah, what's recommended is that you reach out privately, not publicly, to shame this person that you feel is having a tough time and to offer your support. And if they seem to be in very dire straits, then you can recommend that they proceed with professional help. And if there's imminent concern, if they're stating that they're in danger of self-harm, then you can either report, 911 where they live and they can get help that way, or to these social media channels where you can say this person is in danger so it can be looked into further.
Let's turn to that dating survey. A quarter of LGBTQ plus singles say politics is changing how they date, where they date. There was this recent survey found nearly half of LGBTQ adults between 18 and 24 say they don't feel safe being open about their identity while dating. This feels like things are going backward, like we're channeling the 80s and 90s in a bad way. So what is it LGBTQ plus adults can do to try and balance being authentic, being themselves, with also feeling safe and staying safe?
Well, you want to protect your location and, not reveal it to everybody. So make sure that your privacy settings are set properly. And also it's about gradually revealing who you are. You never want to, even though you want to be authentic, you don't want to lead with sharing everything right away because you don't know who you could trust and you don't know who's safe. And also, it's a really good time to turn to communities for support and advice to figure out how to handle individual situations. So there is support out there, but it makes sense to be protective and not share everything all at once until you can determine that someone is safe and someone is worth revealing truths to.
Doctor, also I want to ask you what I mentioned a moment ago, the self-help method. It's called tapping. It's also known as emotional freedom technique. It's apparently gained a lot of popularity in recent years as a mental health treatment, but experts, some of them anyway, are still skeptical of its effectiveness. What is this?
I guess it's defined as a pseudoscience, but many people have experienced relief. So basically, it's a combination of psychology and acupuncture, where you tap certain areas of the body, either stating an affirmation that's positive or releasing some kind of emotional experience. Some people feel relief from this psychologically. It gets them to identify what emotions they're having and release them. And some people even report feeling a reduction in physical pain. So I say if it works, great. And many people like it because it's so accessible. Anyone can do it, and you can use this method wherever you are.
All right. Dr. Robbie Ludwig, thanks as always for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Some potentially life-changing innovations could make it easier to take some popular weight loss drugs. One new drug would require monthly injections instead of the current weekly dose. So when could these new medications hit the market? NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has the latest.
Major potential breakthroughs in the booming world of weight loss drugs. First, drug maker Amgen trumpeting the early experimental success of Maritide, a longer-lasting GLP-1 injection that patients could take once a month instead of once a week. The regimen typically recommended for Ozempic, Wegovy, and other popular medications.
I have no plans of ever not being on these medications.
The idea of monthly shots, welcome news for patients like Chanel Robinson, who's lost nearly 100 pounds using semaglutides.
That would be fantastic for people that are scared to give themselves an injection.
Another possible alternative to weekly injections, Eli Lilly announcing their GLP-1 pill, which would be the first oral weight loss drug, is showing promising results and could be widely available next year. The third major development, a new combination of drugs that researchers say could help patients lose weight without losing muscle mass.
Day 4 of rebuilding the muscle that we lost while taking Ozempic.
Something Robinson says she experienced.
I can feel myself incredibly weak.
Just to have this growing list of options for these medications, how exciting is that for you as a doctor?
it's like boundless excitement to see how many tools we have in our toolbox to treat our patients. Now, in our future, we're going to have so many different options that can best suit the patient's needs. I mean, it's thrilling.
But still no word on cost or exactly how long it could be before these new drugs reach patients. Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
All right, so some meteorologists predict nearly 50 heat records could be tied or broken across the U.S. today.
Yeah, sweltering temperatures can pose a number of health risks: dehydration, rashes, or more life-threatening illnesses like heat stroke. But experts warn that dangerous heat can also negatively affect how well you sleep.
NBC News medical analyst Dr. Kavita Patel joins us now with some tips to sleep better when it is so incredibly hot out. Dr. Patel, good morning. First, just walk us through how dangerous heat levels can actually impact the quality of our sleep.
Joe, Savannah, sometimes you think it's just discomfort, but it can actually have a pretty significant impact on your sleep. We say the optimal temperature for sleeping is around 68 degrees. That's pretty cool. So none of us are getting those temperatures right now, even with some of our air conditioning. You can have difficulty falling asleep. You can have more frequent wake-ups. And then, to be honest, with people who have sleep apnea, which is a large portion of our country, it can actually make those health conditions worse and then just give you less REM sleep, or that deep sleep that we really need to restore and grow. And this can apply to children and adults.
What can people do to help try to cool themselves off when it's so hot out? What are the best kind of like practices for sleeping, for your bed, to try to get a better night's sleep?
First things first, I tell people to try to actually take a cool shower. If that's not part of your routine, just given this heat wave that most of the country is in, just try to make it part of your routine. You're not necessarily doing it to get clean. You're just doing it to get a quick rinse off. So even that just cold spurt of water right before bed can help. It seems like it might wake you up and not get you to sleep. It actually changes the body and helps you get some deeper sleep. Then, to your point about bedding, Savannah, just making sure that you have cool sheets. Some people don't know what that means. I tell people to just look for something. If you raise the sheets up, you can kind of see through them. They're probably thinner and cooler and can give you more of that restorative sleep. Take off any heavy covers. And then here's a little pro tip. I tell people to take their sleeping, just anything that they're sleeping with, their pajamas, anything, throw it in the freezer very quickly, just even for like 5 minutes, and put it on, and it can just get you chilled and get you out into that deep sleep. But just a little bit of a tip that even I've tried. Just try your socks, Savannah, when it's hot outside. Put your socks in the freezer, and then I promise you 5 minutes.
So interesting.
That is a good idea. But use that fridge, use that freezer, and start a little bit at a time. I love that. And for a blanket, just use saran wrap. That's very thin. You can see through it. All right, so not everyone has the luxury of being able to easily keep their bedroom at a cool temperature. They may not have air conditioning. They may not have a great fan. What else can you try and do to set yourself up for a good night's rest?
Hydration, hydration, hydration. So if you can, make sure that you've got just some water container, something, even if it's one of those containers that can keep water cool, just have that by your bed. I even encourage people to try to drink, even 8 to 10 ounces of really cool water right before they go to bed, and have that nearby to reach for. Obviously, if you can block the sun from coming in, and that involves like blackout drapes or something that can just keep them, so not the window curtains, but true blackout drapes, that can actually help keep a room several degrees cooler. And then I think on top of that, I do think that there's a lot of assistance with fans. I know that doesn't make sense sometimes. If the air is warm, what is a fan going to do? It can just help circulate the air so that you can move the air. Even if it's warmer air, it can at least help you get some of that restorative sleep. But this is very real. Much of the country does not have air conditioning. So these are all very practical tips. And I come down to my basic one. Put things in the freezer for brief moments. I even take for the kids, I'll take a wet towel, like a washcloth, and then put some water on it, freeze it, and just put it on their foreheads when it's just so hot and they just need to be able to get to sleep quickly.
I'm imagining all the people tonight who are going to be doing this for the first time, clearing out their freezers and putting their clothes in. And it's
such a good idea.
Right.
Dr. Patel, as always, thank you. Coming up, a common problem prompting calls for change in the health insurance industry.
Is this system broken?
Yes, I think we're getting worse patient outcomes because of it.
When we come back, why the process of pre-authorization is being called into question.
And from now hiring to hiring eventually, we'll look at why more companies are taking longer to fill open positions. This is Morning News Now. We are back with a healthcare hurdle doctors and patients deal with all the time. It's called prior authorization. It's the process used by many health insurance companies all the time. It can be long and frustrating and delay critical care for patients. As NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin explains, the organization that represents several insurers is acknowledging the system is broken and now pledging to make changes.
Jason Probst has chronic inflammation. He says it took hours on the phone and 4 denials to finally get his insurance to approve the medication he needs. This sounds like a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. It felt like a deliberate attempt to delay the treatment that I needed.
The process of prior authorization is a headache for many patients like Probst. It requires doctors to get sign-off from insurance companies before certain care can occur. Each year, health insurance companies issue millions of denials, refusing to pay for doctor-recommended treatments based on their own assessment. Is this system broken?
Yes, I think we're getting worse patient outcomes because of it.
Mike Tuffin is the CEO of AHIP, the organization representing major insurance companies. Do you agree this process is broken?
Yes, the experience is not working for people.
Announced a series of commitments to simplify prior authorization, including applying the process more selectively and expanding real-time responses.
We're trapped in this outdated system with paper and fax machines. We want to abolish all of it. We want a digital, interconnected system that puts the patient in charge.
But some doctors are skeptical, pointing to previous industry pledges that didn't pan out.
I have to see it to believe it. And so I love the intention, but I would really like to see happier, healthier patients, which we're not seeing right now.
Erin McLaughlin, NBC News.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's get you some money headlines now, starting with new promises from Target on back-to-school savings.
CNBC's Savannah Now is that and some other money headlines. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Joe. Good morning to you. I can't believe we're already talking back to school, but Target is vowing not to raise prices for back to school items this year. Now, the retailer says shoppers will also enjoy seeing last year's list of 20 must-have supplies that cost less than $20, as well as its top-selling $5 backpack. Target is also promising to offer discounts for students and teachers, and its annual Circle Week event is returning with special deals on school supplies, electronics, and other products. T-Mobile's new satellite phone service powered by SpaceX Starlink will launch July 23rd. Now, it will initially only include messaging, but T-Mobile plans to expand the service by the end of the year, including a data upgrade in October. T-Satellite will be available to anyone, not just T-Mobile customers, as part of an included service on the Experience Beyond plan for $10 a month. And the CEO of Hinge says the idea of dating AI chatbots is playing with fire. Speaking with the editor-in-chief at The Verge, Justin McLeod, even though Hinge has several AI features, says there's a danger that people get to a place where they may be talking to AI all the time or falling in love with it. Now, he compares those types of relationships to junk food, and McLeod believes that in the importance of real human connection, encouraging people to put down their phones and go out on dates in the real world, guys.
Good advice there.
No kidding.
I think so.
Thanks, Savannah. These days, finding a job can feel like you're walking through molasses. Despite low unemployment rates, experts say it's actually getting harder for candidates to land a job.
It's due partially to growing uncertainty around the economy, also geopolitical instability, and then these trade and tariff policies. Well, all that uncertainty is leading companies to operate cautiously. For many employers, that means slower hiring. A new survey from talent firm Robert Half revealed that 93% of managers say the hiring process takes longer now than it did 2 years ago.
Bill Driscoll is the Senior District President of Technology Staffing Services at Robert Half. He joins us now to talk about what is slowing down the hiring process. Good to have you with us. So why does this process take longer now than it did a couple years ago?
Well, there's lots of reasons that you just mentioned several of them, but there's more and more candidates looking for jobs, and the hiring process has just gotten longer and longer. More people involved, which slows things down, which makes it, more difficult to land the candidate you want. Checking references, interviews, too many people on the hiring team. All of those things combine to really stretch out the hiring process.
This survey also found maybe there's some good news on the horizon. More than half of managers plan to expand their teams in the second half of this year. Then it also found an overwhelming majority say it's difficult to find skilled talent. What are some of the most common hiring mistakes that managers make and how it ultimately impacts their team that could make them sort of weary as they're going through that hiring process looking for the right talent?
Right. Well, in our research, we kind of found two things. You've got the technical skill mistake, right, where you don't actually hire somebody that has the exact technical skills you want. About half the group said that was the issue. The other was the culture part. We kind of call it the art and science. The science is the technical skills you need to do the job. The art is the culture that it takes to fit into the company and to be a successful part of the team. And so marrying those two in the hiring process, being very, very conscious of that while you're hiring is very important.
What are the things companies can do to just try and streamline this hiring process, which I have to imagine would make it better for everyone?
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Well, first of all, stick with the original detailed job description. I think because of some of the uncertainty that you mentioned earlier, companies aren't hiring as much. So they're trying to, at times, have a catch-all job description, which is hard to fill. Make sure that you have speed, in mind, because if you don't, the candidate that you want might get away. And lastly, we suggest working with a staffing firm like Robert Half, where you can hire a contract professional either to fill in gaps or on what I like to call a live tryout, where you get the person in, make sure they do have the technical and the culture fit, and then convert them onto your full-time payroll.
Let's talk about the other side of this. What tips do you have for people who are looking for a new job?
Well, first of all, expand your search. Have an open mind. Oftentimes we see people too laser focused on one particular thing. And you never know where that next job is coming from. Secondly, upskill. Take advantage of ways to, add new skills to your repertoire, like contract work, which would be a third thing, to use a contract firm. And my number one advice is network, network, network.
That is the endless tip. No matter what technology does, you got to make those connections in person if at all possible. All right, Bill Driscoll, great advice. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, America's favorite pastime is getting a glow up.
Yeah, when we return, we're going to turn the lights down and take you to the ballpark where a game of baseball is as bright as ever. This is Morning News Now.
Finally this hour, a fun new twist on America's favorite pastime.
It's a glow-in-the-dark game with a strong fan base that is only getting bigger. NBC's Sam Brock followed the glow to the ballpark to find out what it's all about.
Who's brought stripes?
There's something big brewing on the baseball diamond. The Cosmic Baseball League that goes way beyond pregame block parties and up-close meet and greets.
How many families do you see?
All of them. Like everything. It's all the kids, and the guys are so good with them. Like they are signing every ball, every hat, every jersey.
Hitting a baseball is one of the hardest things that people can do, and then you turn lights off and make it glow. I can't imagine how hard that is.
But in a suburb of Richmond, Virginia, two teams of mostly former college and minor league players, the Cosmic Chili Peppers and the Glowmojis, are defying the laws of light and taking a swing at it.
3, 2, 1.
The cosmic transformation from a seemingly regular game with a few quirks to nighttime blacklight baseball. A major win for kids and parents alike, says co-owner Chris Martin.
What kind of a reaction have you gotten from fans?
Overwhelming. Yeah, I think the biggest piece for us is how do you create a family environment? This is built for families.
And it's a whole operation to prepare, from reflective jerseys to spray-painted players and wannabe players.
Does this work with my skin tone?
Yes, it does.
After an hour of daylight play and a quick intermission, the magic begins. Players pouring onto the field in fluorescent formation and the 50 to 100 black lights turned up.
Now, we're good to go. This is Cosmic Baseball.
Yellow baseball soaring into the night sky. And electric pink jerseys catching eyes and capturing hearts.
What has been your favorite part so far of what you've seen?
Like watching all
like the lights and all the people and the music. Players come up to the fans and talk with them and interact with them, and they like walk around the whole stadium.
Pitcher Sam Bragg spent 7 years in the minor leagues with the A's. What's the most challenging part about it?
It's just a little difficult picking up the ball in the dark. For the most part, it's the same game.
Pitchers just give us fastballs because it's already hard enough to see in the dark.
All the cosmic baseball buzz has led to a tour with 7 parks this summer, from Durham to Nashville.
We're in probably 400,000 range for our lottery.
But for a new concept that's already been a home run, even the most excited young fans are just taking it one base at a time. Sam Brock, NBC News.
That is very cool, but it looks very hard. I cannot imagine catching a fly ball in the dark.
I can't do it in the day, so me either.
That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for starting your Tuesday with us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Breaking this morning, a war of words. President Trump lashing out this morning at both Israel and Iran from the White House earlier after a fragile ceasefire agreement was thrown into question. Israel now vowing to respond with force after accusing Iran of violating the surprise truce. That ceasefire first announced by President Trump just hours ago on social media, with both nations initially accepting the proposal. Now, Iran is denying Israel's claim of a severe violation of their pact. It all comes less than a day after Iran launched a retaliatory strike on a U.S. military base in Qatar, a response to those devastating American strikes on key nuclear facilities in Iran over the weekend. We're going to bring you the latest as the commander-in-chief prepares to press for diplomacy on the world stage.
We are going to begin, though, with those strong words from President Trump this morning after he said both Iran and Israel violated a ceasefire he announced hours earlier.
He was speaking to reporters outside the White House earlier this morning, clearly frustrated, specifically with Israel. He said he's not happy with the country for its actions after agreeing to the deal. Let's listen to some of those comments.
I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either. They both violated it. I'm not sure they did it intentionally. They couldn't rein people back. I don't like the fact that Israel went out this morning at all. And I'm going to see if I can stop it.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, who's following the developments from the White House.
This morning, President Trump is preparing to head to the NATO summit in the Netherlands, with the ceasefire he announced late yesterday hanging by a thread. After a dramatic day of diplomacy from the Oval Office, the president posting, "Congratulations, world, it's time for peace," and telling NBC News in an exclusive phone call, "I think the ceasefire is unlimited. It's going to go forever." The Trump administration hailing a foreign policy victory following U.S. airstrikes targeting Iran's nuclear program over the weekend.
Everyone said, who was a critic of this action, that it would lead to World War III, and instead we have a ceasefire.
The announcement also drawing skepticism from some Democrats.
Iran has agreed to a lot of things over the years. Anything official out of Tehran probably isn't worth, much more than the paper that it's written on.
When Iran fired missiles at a base with U.S. troops in Qatar yesterday, the White House had expected it, according to a senior White House official, because Iran had tipped off Qatar, which in turn alerted the U.S. The president calling Iran's attack a very weak response, adding no Americans were harmed and hardly any damage was done. Most importantly, they've gotten it all out of their system. Shortly after that post, the senior White House official says the president called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with a direct message. No more war, no more fighting. The Iranians have been significantly weakened.
While we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear program, our hope and our expectation is that they're not going to try to rebuild that program.
While the White House disputes reports that Iran may have moved some equipment and uranium from the nuclear sites before the U.S. strikes, critics say it's just too soon to tell.
It'll be a good long time before we know, if we ever learn, whether we were able to actually destroy the stocks of 60% enriched uranium.
For more on this, let's bring in Lieutenant General Steph Twitty. He is an NBC News military analyst and former deputy commander of U.S. European Command. Good to have you with us as always. What do you make, first of all, of these comments from the president this morning that he's not happy with both Iran and Israel? Do you think a ceasefire seemed too good to be true this early in the conflict, or is it something you think can still be achieved?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with the president, and I don't blame him. He should not be happy. You know, when we say ceasefire, that's what it is. You put down your weapons, and the leadership ensures that forces on both sides adhere to a ceasefire agreement. And obviously that has not happened. And this is all about leadership all the way up to the top. And so both of these leaders should adhere to this ceasefire agreement and move towards lasting peace in the region. And so I agree with the president's statement.
Let's turn to yesterday's attack by Iran on that U.S. airbase in Qatar. A senior Qatari official told NBC News they were expecting the attack, and it appears to almost sort of have been symbolic, just in the sense that it didn't really cause much damage. What message do you think Iran was sending by making that particular move?
Yeah, this was pretty easy to read. This was a face-saving measure, face-saving in terms of they had to do something in order to show the Iranian people that they're prepared to respond, and also show the region that they're prepared to respond. So that's what this is all about. And they did not want to escalate this, particularly escalate with the U.S. And so that's the reason why they call Qatar. And we should be thanking the Qatari government for contacting the U.S. to inform. But I think we had pretty good intelligence that Iran was looking at striking our base in Qatar anyway. But bottom line, this was all about face saving.
Yeah, I mean, since Saturday, we've been talking about how Iran might retaliate against the U.S., keeping in mind there are about 40,000 U.S. troops in the region. There are also worries about a potential attack on the Strait of Hormuz, which is a key shipping route for oil and gas. So what we saw, this response on the air base in Qatar, what does that tell us about Iran right now and how it is able to respond?
Yeah, well, obviously, they're significantly weakened. Over the past 12, 13 days now, the Israelis have pretty much devastated their air defense systems, destroyed many of their fighters. And obviously, the blow that they took from the U.S. strike on their nuclear plant, several of their generals have been killed. And so they're significantly weakened right now. Let's just hope that this ceasefire will hold. Because it is time for Iran to come to the diplomatic table, the bargaining table. And it's all about Iran coming to that table because we do need lasting peace in the Middle East. And so I hope Iran will come to the table, and I hope Israel will adhere to the ceasefire agreement as well, and we can move forward here.
Also, I'm wondering your take on how active the president has been on his Truth Social account since this conflict began yesterday. After the attack on Qatar, we already discussed this. The president said, I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice. We also know now that when he told Tehran to evacuate in a post, that was last week, the plan for Operation Midnight Hammer, which was the operation where the U.S. actually dropped those bombs within Iran, that was already in motion. From a military perspective, how does President Trump's continued social media posting through each step of the conflict, sometimes revealing information that's a little surprising, how does that impact plans and security?
Yeah, I had to tell you here, it is somewhat unorthodox and somewhat unusual for a U.S. president to do this. But I think in this case, it was used pretty effectively as a form of information warfare, particularly the comments about we will obliterate you if you further retaliate. I think that had some impact on how the Iranians would respond. And in many cases, the tweets that he was pushing out sent a direct message to Iran that I thought probably pretty effective. And so I'll hold judgments on, the OPSEC piece and so forth, but I do think it had a positive impact on the outcome and where we are today. Even the ceasefire, pushing the ceasefire effort over Twitter or social media, I thought was pretty effective as well.
Lieutenant General Twitty, always appreciate your analysis. Thank you.
Well, now let's get to that heat wave that's tightening its grip on tens of millions of us here in the U.S. Today, half of the U.S. population, is under heat advisories, with roughly 50 cities bracing for what could be record high temperatures. Several cities are expected to smash their previous records, even by up to 5 degrees. NBC News correspondent Emily Acquitted, she is out there for us. She's in New York with the latest. Hey, Emily, good morning.
Good morning to you. Well, much of America is reaching a boiling point when it comes to this record heat. So we're watching the temperature gauge closely. Already we're approaching 90 degrees, but New York City could hit 100 degrees even before Houston, Texas does so far this year. Paired with it, unhealthy air quality alerts as the worst of this heat wave moves in. The first heat wave of the summer pressing on in full force this morning.
It's just overwhelming, overpowering, suffocating.
And baking more than 145 million Americans in heat alerts in what's poised to be another record-smashing day.
This heat is not for the faint of heart.
It felt like triple-digit temperatures from Texas to New England Monday, including parts of North Jersey, where a pair of outdoor graduation ceremonies landed 16 attendees in the hospital. Dozens of others were treated on site. And the rising temperatures taking a toll on commuters. From buckled roads,
seriously apologize for this,
to a stalled train that Amtrak says malfunctioned, with passengers reporting they were stuck without power and AC near Baltimore. It's so hot, the Washington Monument is closed for tours. In the Catskills of New York, Aaron Blakely says he was forced to shutter his restaurant Monday out of safety concerns for his staff in the kitchen. Describe the conditions to me.
with a flat top and a fryer going full on, it can get up over about 115, 120 degrees on a day like today.
The biggest reprieve for folks trying to beat the heat, the water, from jet skiing to splash pads.
It's nice and cool right here, and City Hall isn't open yet, so we figured that they can play there.
Different ways to beat the heat, right?
Yeah.
Though experts still warn to take precautions outside in this historic heat. What do you want people to remember throughout this really hot week?
Well, we definitely want people to stay hydrated, making sure that you're drinking enough water, making sure we're constantly monitoring how long am I in this heat, because the heat wears you out just sitting in it, let alone walking in or doing extraneous activities.
And this unrelenting heat wave is putting a strain on the power grid. Regional grid operator PJM says it's expecting this week its highest demand since 2013. So that is why experts are encouraging consumers to conserve energy where they can, like postponing doing their laundry. Don't do it in the middle of the day. Limit use of the oven, which can heat up your house, and turn off and unplug any unnecessary appliances, Savannah, as we wait out the worst of this heat.
Oof. All right, Emily, go get inside. Thank you so much.
So what exactly can we expect today? Time for your morning news now weather forecast.
Michelle Grossman's back with us with the latest on the heat. Hey, Michelle.
Hey there, guys. Yeah, we're going to expect more of the same, unfortunately. Part of the problem is it's so early in the season, it's prolonged, and we're looking at temperatures that we are not used to. Already warm by this time of year, but we're adding 20 degrees on top of that. Plus the humidity, so really hard to sweat, and that makes it feel a little hotter for your body. This is what we're looking at today. That is the major story, the dangerous heat across the eastern half of the nation. But we are also looking at another story here. We have severe storm risk throughout portions of the Central Plains into the Midwest. Also on the tail end there, a flood risk. We had the flash flooding, monsoonal flooding throughout New Mexico yesterday. We could see that once again. So that's the second major story as we go throughout today. Heat alerts, we're looking at 149 million people. In the orange, that is your heat advisory. That pink is extreme heat warning. That's where we're going to see temperatures rising once again into the 90s, into the 100s. You factor in that humidity, it will feel like over 110 in spots. And we are talking about those major cities, Boston, New York City, D.C., Pittsburgh, and also Philadelphia. Big area of high pressure tacked in place. It is not budging. It's trapping that heat underneath. And this is going to be the story over the next several days before some see some relief. So temperatures climbing once again into the 90s, over 100 degrees today in Boston. That is the forecasted high. Notice that little number next to it, 106. That is what it's going to feel feel like. So that's what you need to dress for. Light, loose clothing, because your body will perceive the temperature as 106, 104 in New York City, 110 is the heat index in D.C., and we're looking at a heat index of 105 in Virginia Beach. Same story tomorrow in most places. We're looking at temperatures soaring once again into the 90s, into the 100s, 88 degrees in Syracuse. You factor in the humidity tomorrow, it's going to feel like 89. And then notice Raleigh, it's going to feel like 110, 104 in Charleston, Boston, 88. But then we're going to have a front that's going to come through. That's going to bring the chance of some showers and storms, and that will drop the temperature for some as we get towards Thursday. Big time relief for Boston, just 69. That's going to be a humongous difference. Friday, we're looking at 70, 74 Saturday. But notice south of New York City into the Mid-Atlantic, the Carolinas, over towards the Tennessee and Ohio valleys, we're going to keep it warm with temperatures in the 90s. That's the heat story. Part of the heat story, too, along with the stationary front, will spark some showers and storms throughout the central and southern high plains. And then we're going to see that kind of track off to the east. So that risk does extend into the Midwest because of that stationary front. Guys, we could see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. Could see some hail and a tornado or two possible also.
On the East Coast, though, the bright side is you don't have to do your laundry today.
I heard that.
We have given you that excuse.
I definitely heard that
No
from
cooking
Emily.
dinner, appliances off.
I mean, you know, I feel like it's a
no
heat wave.
chores.
Heat wave every day in my house
No
with
chores.
no dinner. My poor husband.
Michelle
Even in the winter.
Michelle says, I can't do the laundry because of the weather. Your husband's like, it's 60 degrees out.
Sorry, Jamie. Wear the
Hilarious.
same T-shirt from 1989.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. There's more to come on this hour of morning news now, including the latest from federal sex trafficking trial against rap mogul Sean Diddy comes. Why we aren't expecting his legal team to call any witnesses once the prosecution rests its case.
First, after the break, is it Return to Sender? A star-studded mega wedding between Amazon billionaire Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez is ruffling feathers in Venice, why some residents are extending a not-so-warm welcome. Those stories and more next. We're back with some disturbing news out of France. Authorities say more than a dozen young women were hospitalized after a series of syringe attacks. More than 140 people were actually jabbed with needles. Police are calling it a coordinated wave of attacks. Say 12 people have been arrested so far. One French media outlet reports several of the victims described feeling faint or noticed sudden pain before discovering puncture wounds on their bodies. It is unclear what may have been in the syringes, but police are investigating whether the incidents were inspired by online posts.
Well, back here in the U.S., there is growing uncertainty over how immigration is impacting hospitals. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin takes us to a medical wing down in Brooklyn, where President Trump's travel restrictions are barring some international residents from jobs.
At OBH Brookdale Hospital in Brooklyn, patients crowd the corridors waiting for help.
Yeah, packed.
Every doctor counts.
There are more patients that are admitted here than we have beds for.
Their care will likely come from foreign doctors here on J-1 visas, now making up most of the hospital's residents, overseen by Dr. Conrad Fisher. Each year, Fisher's program and others just like it in marginalized communities across the country struggle to fill open positions with U.S. graduates. So they look overseas, pulling top medical talent from other countries. Do you think people understand what's at risk here?
Absolutely not. If you're not in the business of medical education, especially in certain areas, you understand not at all how dependent we are on international doctors.
Last week, the Trump administration lifted its pause on J-1 visa interviews to allow for enhanced social media screening. The pause had created a potential disaster for residency programs like Fisher's.
It's somewhere between dire and panic and frustration and fear.
Still, at least 2 doctors admitted to the program can't get into the U.S., according to Dr. Fisher. They're from a list of 19 countries now either banned or partially banned from entering the United States. Announcing the ban, the White House cited national security, saying a number of countries remain deficient with regards to screening and vetting, pointing to exploitation of our visa system and the country's historic failure to accept back removable nationals. Fisher's hoping the residents will qualify for exemptions, but time is running out.
But I can't wait. July 1st or 2nd, 3rd, I got to take care of those people.
So where are you going to go?
I'm going to have to find someone who couldn't get a job somewhere else, and they are out there just available.
So your care will not be as good.
our care and yours.
We're only looking for an opportunity to help the people of America.
Venezuelan doctor Gabriel Pena is hoping for an exemption. He matched to a 3-year family medicine residency in Chino, California. Because he's from Venezuela, he says he can't book an appointment.
And once I was like celebrating this success, well, this other layer of difficulty was added. But I mean, this is what I love. This is what I want to do.
Pena says his ultimate goal is to go back home.
My idea is to learn from you guys with all the tools that you have, and later on use those tools that you provide me to go back to my country, to Venezuela, and help the ones that are there in need.
Back at OBH Brookdale, many of the foreign residents say they're now practicing medicine in fear.
How many of you would experience fear over the visa issue?
Every day.
Everybody.
Do you believe that hospitals like yours are being considered in these decisions?
No. To those people who are in positions of authority, help us take care of Americans. And that's what we're looking for. We need their help.
Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News, New York.
Developing news now out of Ukraine. Officials say several people are dead after a Russian air attack in the Kyiv region.
NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us from London with those details and other news from around the world this morning in 60 seconds. Raf, good morning.
Guys, good morning. Yeah, Ukraine's military also saying it successfully targeted a Russian oil depot that was supplying fuel to Russian units on the front line. Ukraine says its special forces backed by artillery and rockets attacked the Atlas plant in Russia's Rostov region, not far from the border with Ukraine. Russia's defense ministry has so far not commented on the attack. Thailand has begun blocking tourists traveling by land into Cambodia as part of an escalating dispute between the two countries. This all started last month when a Cambodian soldier was killed in a clash at a remote part of the border. Thailand's prime minister says medical patients will still be allowed to cross, but not visitors to Cambodia's lucrative casinos. And finally, going underground in London, a network of secret tunnels 100 feet below the ground could be the next big British tourist attraction. The tunnels were built during the Second World War as the Nazis bombed London and then became a base for British spies, including the man who went on to create James Bond. The site will open in 2028 and include a museum and one of the world's deepest underground bars. So, guys, next time you're in London, let's go. We'll have a subterranean cocktail. The views might not be great, but it does sound cool.
The conversation will be good because we'll have no cell service, so.
There you go.
The views might not be great. It's hilarious. It looks cool. Thanks, Raf. Well, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and his fiancée, Lauren Sanchez, are set to tie the knot this week with a lavish wedding in the Italian city of Venice. Not everyone, though, is welcoming the couple to the famed canal city for this star-studded celebration. Locals are concerned about the large-scale event interrupting their way of life in Venice. NBC News international correspondent Molly Hunter joins us with the details here. Hey, Molly, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. That's right. Not everyone is happy, but final preps are underway, and the famous floating city is gearing up to host perhaps the wedding of the year, star-studded with a very hefty price tag. Sounds like plans may be shifting in real time to avoid not just the protesters, but also the swarms of paparazzi. Take a look.
It's one of the most romantic cities in the world. So it's no wonder why Amazon billionaire Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez chose the Italian lagoon city for their mega wedding. But when the star-studded celebrations kick off in Venice this week, not everyone in the city is so supportive. Greenpeace activists displayed a large banner in the famous St. Mark's Square on Monday, while a group of frustrated locals have threatened to disrupt the couple's big day any way they can. But Deputy Mayor Simone Valentini says the floating city is ready.
This is another wedding for the city, very important one, of course, but without any kind of negative impact to the city.
And not only that, they're working with the Bezos-Sanchez team to make sure it all runs smoothly.
The city is in contact with the organization of events, and we are trying to have all the information in advance to deal with them.
But the happy couple and their bikini-clad friends don't seem all that worried, kicking off the big week with a rowdy foam party on Bezos' yacht, the Kourou. But the finer details of the multi-day events are closely guarded, and the couple reportedly making last-minute venue changes. Now moving one of the lavish parties to the city's old port shipyard, the Arsenale, more discreet and much harder to access, unless, of course, you're in a super yacht. And they've taken over the iconic San Giorgio Maggiore, a stunning separate island that offers even more privacy.
Once that they're coming in, here is going to be a different world because it's quiet, lovely, relaxing.
But the billionaire's extravaganza is more celebration than ceremony.
We are in the city hall of Venice, and George Clooney got married here. Bezos is not doing a civil wedding under Italian law. The city won't provide official wedding ceremony.
The city still remains open for business during the height of tourist season. And in just a few days, Bezos and his estimated 200 guests will be among them.
Now, we do have some hints, Savannah, about who might be joining based on that celeb-studded bachelorette that Lauren had in Paris. But city officials say this is a city used to hosting major events with lots of people, including VIP weddings. Of course, you heard the deputy mayor there mention George Clooney and, of course, Amal's wedding back in 2014. But officials also say some guests have already arrived in Savannah. We actually already have a team, a crew there waiting for me. I fly tomorrow. They have their binoculars out. They are looking around at bars, looking for some guests. So hopefully we'll have some more details for you tomorrow.
And you'll be reporting from a bar, right? To looking at the other places.
Look, I've been told that with an Aperol Spritz in hand, you are more likely to spot celebs in Venice. So I'm on it.
You've got to go undercover.
Definitely get people talking to you more, at least. You'll fit in.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Coming up, new fallout this morning from that stunning not guilty verdict handed down to Karen Reed.
Two top courtroom players, the special prosecutor and the jury foreman, now breaking their silence on a retrial and acquittal that captivated America. That's next on Morning News Now. We are back now with a look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning, starting with the closely watched race to become New York City's next mayor.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona joins us with the latest. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Here's a look at some of the top political headlines. Voters head to the polls in New York City today to select the Democratic nominee for mayor. 11 candidates are running in the primary to replace incumbent Mayor Eric Adams, who's running as an independent this fall after the DOJ dropped its corruption case against the mayor. And the race has attracted some national attention. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez endorsed Assemblyman Zoran Mamdani, while former President Bill Clinton threw his weight behind former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Meanwhile, over on Capitol Hill, Republicans are ramping up their mental fitness investigation into former President Joe Biden. Dr. Kevin O'Connor, the former White House physician who treated Biden while in office, has agreed to appear for a deposition before the House Oversight Committee next month, a source familiar tells NBC News. The committee will also begin transcribed interviews with other former Biden aides this week who agreed to come in voluntarily. And finally, Trump's health secretary in the hot seat again. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will testify before a congressional committee today about the agency's budget request. Democrats are expected to press Kennedy on his announcement that the COVID-19 vaccine will no longer be recommended for pregnant women and children, in addition to agency layoffs and DOGE cuts. And that's what's making news in politics this morning, guys.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The prosecution in the Sean Diddy Combs trial is expected to rest its case today after several weeks of testimony.
Yeah, Combs' defense team said it would not be calling any witnesses of its own, bringing the trial to an end sooner than expected. Combs is facing several criminal counts, including sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy. He has denied the allegations against him.
NBC News Now legal analyst Angela Senadella joins us now to break down the trial so far. Angela, good morning. So yesterday the jury was shown explicit videos of those so-called freak-offs involving Sean Combs' former girlfriend. She's going by the pseudonym Jane. The jury also heard from a federal agent who broke down text messages sent by Combs and to Combs directly. What were the key takeaways there?
So I really think that all of the video imagery that's being shown to the jury is going to be instrumental to the prosecution, because we know that the defense's strategy with all of the sex acts is going to be total consensuality, that every sex act was likely consensual. But when you see videos, which obviously the prosecution has chosen, that will likely then indicate that there was some level of non-consensuality or just suspends belief that maybe it's just like so unbelievable that someone would be consensual, consensual in those moments, that's going to be extremely impactful. But we also then did have the defense in cross-examination offering some other snippets for the jury to watch as well. And we don't know what was in those snippets, but likely it's their attempt to prove that, look, in other places, you do see these women, according to the defense, engaging in consensuality.
Angela, Sean Combs' defense team, as we just said, says it's planning to rest its case this week without calling any witnesses. They are going to submit some evidence, though. Explain what's going on here. Why would the team decide to do that, and what do you think they're planning to focus on?
Yeah, so it's not unusual for the defense to just not provide additional witnesses. And that's because any witness that the defense does put up, obviously, especially if Diddy himself were to testify, then opens the door to extensive cross-examination by the prosecution. And so all the defense has to do is really poke holes, right? They just have to raise enough reasonable doubt for the jury to wonder whether or not the prosecution has fully made their case. So to that extent, it's almost like the cross-examination itself throughout the entire trial was the defense's case. It's just them asking questions to just say, did the prosecution meet their burden, which obviously the defense is going to argue that they did not.
So the jury could begin deliberating as soon as Friday. Before that, of course, we're going to get the closing arguments. Each side expected to take 4 hours to make their final case to jurors. What do you think we'll hear?
Yeah, so we will just hear a summation of the arguments on both sides. And this is really important, really, for both sides, for the prosecution, because the trial has been so long, right? There have been so many witnesses, 34, and so much evidence that has been put forth. But now the prosecution has to tie it all together for the jury and say, oh, you might not have thought that at this point there was evidence for racketeering, for example. But when you look at it all together, you look in totality, the summation of the employees, the assistants who engaged in, paying people off or buying drugs. And then you also take into account the testimony of the victims, that together could prove racketeering, right? And then you have the defense, who's obviously going to just continue to say there was consensuality and also the prosecution didn't meet their burden.
Right. Angela, always appreciate your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angela. Well, it's been nearly a week now since Karen Reed was acquitted of murder in the retrial in the death of her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe. There's been plenty of reaction to the verdict in the past several days, and we're now hearing for the first time from the special prosecutor in the case, who's expressing his feelings about the acquittal. Today, co-host Savannah Guthrie has the details.
It's been almost a week since Karen Reed's fate was sealed.
Defendant not guilty or guilty? Not guilty. So say you, Mr. Foreman? So say you all?
The jury clearing Reed of second-degree murder, manslaughter, and leaving the scene of a deadly accident. And for the first time since that acquittal, Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan ending his silence, saying in a statement, I am disappointed in the verdict and the fact that we could not achieve justice for John O'Keefe and his family. Continuing, after an independent and thorough review of all of the evidence, I concluded that the evidence led to one person and only one person. Prosecutors had alleged that Karen Reed backed her SUV into O'Keefe in a drunken rage while dropping him off at an after-party following a night of bar hopping back in January 2022, calling dozens of witnesses to the stand from people at the scene.
What did she say to you? I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
To crash reconstruction experts. But Reed's lawyers claimed she was framed in a law enforcement cover-up.
Pattern injury that you see on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm is consistent with an animal bite or claw marks.
Yes, it is. It turned into a battle of the experts.
Neither of the events that occurred on that date were triggered by a collision.
And although Reed did not take the stand herself, the prosecution tried to use her own words to build a case against her.
Didn't I say could I have hit him? Or was it told to me that I said I hit him?
At the end, the jury felt there was not enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Reed did it and convicted her only of driving under the influence.
We are also now hearing this morning from the jury foreman in the Karen Reed trial. He spoke earlier this morning with our friends at Today, where he explained what it was like during the trial and the deliberations. We are not revealing his name to protect his privacy. Here is part of that conversation.
Collectively together, we looked at all the evidence that we was presented with, and we made our decision off of that. We didn't at first some had their own personal opinions on what the case should be or whatever, and was trying to go down like a personal feelings and stuff like that, and we had to stick to what evidence we had in front of us and go with that. So it was more or less just trying to figure out that part. And it took us a couple of days to really get the gears going, but when we did, it was smooth trails after that.
Sir, to that point, the evidence, was there a singular piece of evidence that seemed to move the majority of the jurors in the room, or were there multiple pieces?
It just was. It was the whole case altogether, all the pieces, testimony, witnesses, and it just a lot together. And people had questions. We used the evidence to answer their questions, and we didn't try to go down these rabbit holes where we're just getting lost in what all these other things that was thrown at us in court or whatever, and we just had to lock down and figure it out through the evidence.
Sir, I asked one of your other fellow jurors this question. It's a very fine distinction. In your opinion, is Karen Reed innocent? She didn't do this? Or is it just that the prosecutors did not put on enough evidence to convict?
Karen Reed is innocent, and she didn't do this crime. No one could prove that she did this crime, so I looked at her from day one as an innocent woman that needed to be proven guilty, and I don't think any of that was shown in this process.
Well, Karen Reed's defense team argued during the trial she was the victim of a biased and corrupt police investigation. Former Massachusetts State Trooper Michael Proctor, who led the probe into John O'Keefe's death, was fired over his conduct during the investigation. He says accusations that he is corrupt and that he helped frame Reed are, quote, ridiculous. Well, coming up, a few bumps in the road plaguing Tesla's robotaxi rollout.
Yeah, after the break, why the federal government is now looking into the new service that just started over the weekend in Texas. That's next. Stay with us.
We're back now with some money news, starting with some fresh eyes on Tesla following its robotaxi launch over the weekend.
NBC Savannah now has that and some other money news. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning. Yeah, so the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has contacted Tesla after reviewing videos posted online of robotaxis allegedly using the wrong lane and speeding on roads in Austin, Texas. Now, Tesla began a limited robotaxi service with a dozen or so cars in the city on Sunday, planning to avoid bad weather, busy intersections, and it won't take anyone under 18. Now, Tesla hasn't responded to a request from Reuters for comment. Starbucks says it's not currently considering a sale of its entire China operations. The company's statement coming after a report by a Chinese financial magazine says it was in talks without disclosing where it got the information. Now, Starbucks has struggled in China since the pandemic, facing increased competition from local rivals such as Luckin Coffee, while sales have been flat so far this year. And YouTube and Australia's internet watchdog are sparring over the country's social media ban for kids under the age of 16. Now, the regulator is urging Australia's government to reverse an exemption for YouTube from the ban, which goes into effect in December and is the first anywhere in the world. They say YouTube is a master of recommendation-based algorithms to keep users online. YouTube accusing the regulators of discounting the government's own research, which found 2/3 of parents consider the platform suitable for kids under 15, guys.
All right, interesting stuff, Savannah. Thank you.
We have some good news for music fans this morning. Dolly Parton is heading to Las Vegas. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park has details on the Queen of Country's new concert residency.
The Queen of Country isn't clocking out anytime soon. This December, Dolly Parton returns to the stage for a limited run residency, telling fans, grab your rhinestones, Vegas is calling.
Dolly
Dolly, the queen. I absolutely have to go.
6 concerts at the Coliseum at Caesar's Palace will feature some of Dolly's greatest hits. Like I Will Always Love You and Jolene. The 79-year-old showing no signs of slowing down, just months after the passing of her beloved husband of nearly 6 decades, Carl Dean.
You know how I loved him, and he would want me to be working today.
And today, her impact goes far beyond music. Dolly's brand now spans beauty, food, philanthropy, and entertainment. The musical about her life premieres in Nashville next month. I caught up with her recently as she celebrated 40 years of Dollywood.
What's the secret to keep going? I mean, you don't stop.
Well, I don't know how to stop. It's just like a child that you teach how to run. You say run, it gets to go, and it don't know how to stop. I'm going to make hay while the sun shines.
And she's still glowing with that signature Dolly sparkle. Kathy Park, NBC News.
Tickets for Dolly live in Las Vegas go on sale tomorrow at Ticketmaster. Some of the special packages fans can purchase include personal photo opportunities with Parton, an onstage tour, and access to Dolly's Rhinestone Lounge.
Oh.
It's going to be a hot ticket. 6 shows, though. It's going to be competitive, I think, to get seats.
I just want to drink in the Rhinestone Lounge.
Exactly.
What is that? Cool.
Coming up, bringing the queer community together with food.
The humble potluck has been a cultural staple for years, and now it's being celebrated with a brand new cookbook that might just give you a few ideas for your next get-together. That's next on Morning News Now.
To the next. Tom Yamas is there to start us off tonight. Trust is the anchor.
For NBC Nightly News, I'm Tom Yamas.
Evenings on NBC.
Here's The Scoop, a new podcast from NBC News, where our journalists take a deep dive into the day's top stories, bringing you closer to the headlines and conversations that are shaping our world. From the front page to the zeitgeist in 15 minutes or less. Listen daily wherever you get your podcasts.
Finally this hour, we're continuing our coverage of Pride Month with a celebration of an LGBTQ+ institution the potluck. For decades, these informal events have brought members of the community together through food, helping them find welcoming and safe spaces. That important legacy is now being celebrated in a newly released cookbook, along with dozens of delicious recipes for desserts to bring along to your next potluck. The book is called Potluck Desserts: Joyful Recipes to Share with Pride. And we're lucky to be joined by the author, Justin Burke. Justin, congratulations on the book. This is such a good idea. I'm glad to have you with us here, especially during Pride Month. So you've got 75 dessert recipes in the book. We'll maybe talk about those in just a sec. Sure. But what I think is important is just why you wrote it. This isn't just a cookbook to instruct. You say it is a journey. What is it you hope people are going to take away from this?
You know, I think it's, there's not a cookbook that really speaks to the queer and trans community. And we needed to see that. We needed to know that we were accepted. And, you know, food teaches you something when we learn these lessons from our parents, our friends. But in the queer community, we're not being inspired between our peers. And so I wanted this book to speak specifically to the queer and trans community and our ally community, just to get those nuggets of skills and information to take you on this journey with your life.
A professionally trained pastry chef you are, but what experience made you decide that you wanted to write this and share this story?
So, not knowing it when I was 18, I attended my first queer potluck in Long Beach, California, and I was only there for 4 months, but that group of folks there, that chosen family, they loved me unconditionally. I wasn't out. I was just beginning to explore my identity. But they planted these seeds around food and queer identity and joy. And so through my career in the food world and in food writing, I started to connect these dots that I had been collecting through my journey. And then I just had this light bulb moment where potluck desserts, queer potluck desserts, could be a vehicle to bring all these stories together, because desserts are comforting. You don't need them to for sustain. And so it was kind of this subtle message too of life is gonna get better as long as you have your chosen family, and it's pretty sweet. So I kind of pulled it all together.
As someone who, if you moved, you were only there for 4 months after this first potluck, moved somewhere else. How did these potlucks play a role in just helping you find community throughout your life? I
think as I moved and traveled around the world, I started understanding the benefit of relationships, no matter how long they were, and understanding too how relationships change. And it helped me redefine my relationship with my blood family and understand that I wasn't tied to this idea that that was the only group of people who could help me and support me. That you could have this chosen family and they can provide you so much more that you had no idea about. And so it was just kind of collecting those relationships and those stories, and it helps you be who you are, and also you carry their stories and legacies too.
You discussed this idea of how I think there's a stereotype that the queer community throws these fabulous parties with champagne and fancy food. And that's not the truth necessarily, but it doesn't have to be that, right?
Exactly. I mean, we can throw a good party, but I mean, these were very humble events. I mean, my first one, we were sourcing thrift store dishware. I mean, the drinks were coming out of Solo cups from the gas station around the corner. Everything was hand-me-down furniture, and it was beautiful because it was the people that were there and the stories and the joy that made that the most fantastic, elegant experience ever.
Plus, the food probably tasted great. We only have a few seconds here. I know you can't pick just one, but if there's one or two desserts you got to point people to, what's
the cherry chocolate soda cake.
Okay.
It's super retro. It's beautiful. It's fun. The Snickerdoodle peach cobbler.
Oh my goodness.
That one's a really fantastic one. But I mean, the recipes and the stories, it's pretty exciting.
That's what it's about. It's a mix of those things. Congratulations on everything, Justin Burke. We appreciate your time this morning and sharing your story. That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.